there's this trend of us always signing a deal for someone else. So always being the employee, never the employer. And I think that's the mentality that we see through even, like I said, the biggest faces that represent us, because they're always working under somebody.
The people that are pushing all these different types of brands like Nike, Adidas, Gymshark, you name it, Puma. When it comes to, we are back on the podcast, baby. Oh yeah, I feel so good to be here, healthy, alive, striving to be better than yesterday.
100%.
Oh man. So we had a hell of a time yesterday. What a great party.
Good party.
I really enjoyed it.
Celebration of your birthday and our boy Francis. Shout out Francis.
Yep.
That was dope, man. I like those type of get-togethers. I like small little house parties, little get-togethers where you know people. To me, that's like the best situation. Like, I don't know about you, but like, do you like the clubbing type of thing, like that vibe for birthdays or celebrations?
I think I'm over that. Honestly, I've gotten to a stage in life where the best parties are the ones that are more close and intimate. People you know, people that you see on a regular basis, or even here and there, more so than random people when you go to the club and, you know, the fake relationships. You only see them on club nights, and you don't see them in the actual days. You don't do any type of activities with them, so on and so forth. So I think I've learned to enjoy more close and intimate house parties because you get to know more about a person and you can have more individual conversations, or even within a group situation, you could talk about certain things that you probably wouldn't talk about within and doing activities and so on and so forth. So
Yeah, no, 100%. Like you said, you can be way more intimate. You actually get to know people.
Yes.
You actually are forging relationships where your time not really wasted.
Yes.
As much like as the club. But people would argue, they'll be like, oh, it's probably because you're getting old, or it's probably because you don't want to spend. What would you say to those type of criticisms? Because a lot of the times going to the club to be successful or have a great time, usually it's those that are spending the most, right? Whether you have a bottle service, you have a section, whatever the case may be, usually money is what determines how much fun you're going to have at the club, right? Because money equals access at the club. You know, line bypass, all those things you don't need to deal with. But on the flip side, someone can argue, well, if you're not doing all those things, of course, I wouldn't want to go to the club either. But if you were in the position where things of that nature were available to you, do you think you would change your mind on that club culture?
Well, I'll tell you this much, because even guys that I know that do have money, they
or
say
access, like connection,
or
whatever
yeah,
that is.
the thing is, when they first got their money, that was the first thing that they were doing. You know, they were enjoying the finer things of life. So that means they were buying all the luxury brands. They were in the club. They were popping bottles. They're doing the whole nine. But then they realized that they felt empty afterwards. Like, that wasn't something that they wanted to do. It was basically a child. I wouldn't say a childhood dream, but maybe like a teenhood dream of theirs to be that guy that's popping the bottles, that has the luxury goods. He has girls all around him, because that's what they pump on in the media.
That's right.
So they're heavily influenced by the media, and they're saying, the media is usually saying that that's what will make you feel fulfilled. But when they actually live that lifestyle, they realize that's not what's fulfilling them. And then some people will retract from it and say, you know what, I did that stuff and it was cool at the time, but I got over it. You know, I was just getting over that thought process of what I envisioned what going out and being in the club popping bottles would look like.
Exactly. And I think what happens is, obviously as you get older, you start to realize, like, okay, like what do I enjoy about this situation, or what do I
you
get
become
out
more
of
conscientious.
this? Yeah, or what am I getting out of this? Like, who am I meeting?
Yeah.
And then you can look back at your history, right? So obviously, if you're a 20-year-old, you don't need to think of these things. Go enjoy yourself, go club, go party, go figure that out. But say you're 30-year-old, all of a sudden you have 10 years or
Yes.
more of you being outside.
Yes.
So you already know what to expect when you go outside. And the fact of the matter is that the culture has changed drastically,
Yes.
like from the last 10 years till now, right?
Mhm.
With the invention of like the Instagrams, the social media becoming what it is. Obviously, all these big things happening change club culture as well, because a lot of the times, what do you see about at the clubs? It's always you know, like you said, like the bottle service, the sparklers coming out with the bottles, the bright lights, all these different things
That all
that you can
attracts teens.
record.
I think it's for
Yeah.
teens mainly.
I think it's for teens, but adults have it. I think it's for adults mainly. Honestly, I wouldn't say teens.
No, I'm saying
Teens
I
don't
think
go to
it's for
clubs.
teens. Like you build, so you manipulate the teens to think that is the goal.
Everything
so then
starts
you become,
when you're young.
Yes, and then you become yeah.
Any manipulation is gonna start when you're young.
Then when you're an
especially-
adult, now that you have the funds,
Yeah.
you're gonna go and actually partake in that.
We don't get into new things as adults. They're the same thing, just like enhanced. Or the
Yes.
idea has already been sold to us. For example, like college has already been sold to us when we were
Yes.
kids. You already were watching movies about people in college and stuff like that. Like when we were kids, we'd watch a show about people in high school,
Yes.
for example, and we would have been in middle school.
Yes.
Right? So we already see what is the expectation. Obviously they put that in those type of shows. They'll put like experiences at the club, experiences with dating, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So we get to that too. But when it comes to like I said, the culture changed so much that now going to the club used to be about like, you know, dancing, meeting people, all these different things. There's so much elements to the club before. Now when you go to the club, it's more about social media, posturing. So a lot of the times it's not even for you to enjoy. It's for you to show others that it looks like you're enjoying
Yes.
what's going on, or look at where I'm at. So I think
Highlight
it becomes it becomes a highlight reel, and the value is not necessarily at the club. It's what it gives you outside of the club. The portrayal of what you're doing and your lifestyle and having access gives you that popularity. Before it was stuck in the club. So if you don't go to the club, you don't know who's popular.
Yes.
But now, if you post it online, all of a sudden everyone knows you're that guy at that spot. You see what I mean? So that's what I mean, where things change and why a lot of people don't even find it fun to go to clubs no more. Rather go to intimate situation. Because it just serves you better than going to the club. It's about posturing.
100%. And that just segues us to our actual topic for today. And I think nowadays what we want to focus on more about is just about the Black community and certain issues that pertains to the Black community. And one issue that I have been looking into for a little bit is Black ownership when it comes to athleisure wear or just having an athletic brand in general, because we're typically in the forefront of the action and the people that are pushing all these different types of brands like Nike, Adidas, Gymshark, you name it, Puma. When it comes to athleisure wear and that whole culture, Black athletes have always been, I would say, taking advantage of their imagery, because they're usually the ones that are pushing these brands. Because if they're not being taken advantage, how come it's not a bunch of other people in the forefront? Why is it Black people? But yet there's no Black-owned brand that has to deal with athleisure wear and is in the forefront of people's minds. And that's what we're trying to debunk today. And what's your thoughts on that?
It's true. I think that we as a Black community don't necessarily hold people accountable in that sense of, you know, creating their own brands, especially like our best. If we're talking about whether it's athlete, celebrity, people that have money, et cetera, or have resources, there's this trend of us always signing a deal for someone else. So always being the employee, never the employer. And I think that's the mentality that we see through even, like I said, the biggest faces that represent us, because they're always working under somebody. They always have their brand with somebody, under another brand. And it's never them putting in their resources completely into that brand or trying to start from the bottom and build it up. point of what I'm trying to say is when you got guys like LeBron James that is supposedly, you know, supposed to be this great basketball player, made all this
Greatest
money,
of all
greatest
time.
of all time, made all this money, and yet he still signed a lifetime deal with Nike.
Nike.
You know, there's guys like Roger Federer. I don't know if you've heard.
I heard this story.
Yeah,
Yep.
he was signed with Nike as well for years.
Yeah.
And he was making a good bank, big money. But he made his own sneaker, I think.
Made his own lane.
His own brand.
So what happened with Federer is he left Nike. When his contract was over, he didn't re-sign.
Yes. This is a tennis player.
This
For folks
tennis
that
player,
don't know,
yes.
Roger Federer.
Yes.
You can search him up and you'll see what path he took. Because he was
Exactly.
signed under the big giants
Yes.
as well.
Exactly. So I don't know how he had this epiphany. There's a gentleman in Switzerland that was creating a shoe that was the Clouds. What's it called?
On.
The On. That's what the brand is called. So he was actually, the guy that actually created it was a marathon runner. But he decided to create his own shoe line. And Roger Federer somehow got in touch with this gentleman. He wanted to invest in the company, right? And the company ended up doing really well. He ended up getting like a lot of athletes. It's almost the same story. The guy that created On is almost the equivalent of Nike's founder, Phil Knight, how they went about creating the Nike brand. But for the other gentleman, he was actually a marathon runner, so he was figuring out a way to build a shoe that was suitable for marathon runners, and then he got marathon runners to wear his shoe. Federer, seeing that he's an athlete, they gelled on that path, and they connected on that, and he decided to join forces, and he didn't look back. He made a boatload of money. And
apparently more than he would have made with his Nike deal.
100%.
And the point of what we're trying to say, going back to just, you know, Black people being in control of branding and understanding the principles of that, is to say that Roger Federer also, you know, he's not no different than anyone else. He just figured out that, look, listen, if I want to make this generational wealth, or if I want to see my people do better, I got to step it up in terms of what deals I'm making, and I got to look long term.
Well, you got to take a risk. That's the thing. I don't understand what happens to these guys when they get to a certain level of life. I think they get to a point where fear is higher. Like the fear factor of them stepping out into their own thing is a lot more scarier than when they had nothing.
Yeah, but yes, of course. But I think it's because we're in a capitalistic society, right? So everything is predicated on survival.
Yes.
And quality of life. So if somebody's going to provide you with the means to survive and a great quality of life, why else am I creating, why would I go through the harder, longer path? People like things ready-made. People love a microwavable dinner where you can just warm it up in 2 minutes instead of having to cook the full meal. You get what I mean? And that's the difference what we have to get to. There's microwave, and then there's the oven and cooking your own meal. It's going to take you longer, but the quality will come out better when you put the work in it. If you let the machine do the work, then what do you expect? It's not going to come out exactly how you envisioned it. So I think when it comes to the Black community, especially because we represent so many athletes and we have so many brand potential, because again, when you're watching Nike commercials and all this stuff, who are you seeing represented in the ads? And,
predominantly Black people.
Predominantly Black athletes, right? And we got to take advantage of some of these things. It's the same thing for...
Because they're buying your likeness.
Yes, they're buying your likeness. And we had talked about this where... you know, and TJ was here and he's saying like, yeah, but, you know, Black people make things cool.
Yes.
We're talking about making things cool. And then we're like, well, if they make things so cool, why don't they have their own brands?
Yes.
And I think both of us never really had an answer for that. Because if we're the trendsetters, if we're the cool guys on the block, where's the Black brand that represents that?
Coolness. That generates that cool factor. How come people don't want to buy into
How come
brands?
people wouldn't buy into your brand? So they buy into it when it's owned by somebody else. But if you run the brand and own and operate the brand, you're saying that the cool factor disappears. I don't buy that, in my opinion. I think it's a marketing thing, right? You got to learn how to market. You got to understand that, marketing, right? because at the end of the day, you can market anything. We've seen, it's been marketed in this world. Even the worst things have been marketed. If it's marketed correctly, though, people will follow it.
I mean, just look how many different types of brands of waters we have.
This is what I'm trying to say.
Anything can be marketed.
Even a dumb idea can be marketed.
Yes.
If it's marketed well, can have some success.
Yes.
Is what I'm trying to say. But I think it's a mentality shift.
It is a mentality
Unfortunately,
shift.
we're in a capitalistic society, so that makes us more individualistic. And when you're individualistic, you're only thinking about yourself, right? So if you're getting paid, if you're getting fed well, it's like the slave and the plantation. If you're getting fed well, you're getting everything's good. Why would you run away from the plantation?
That is so true. And I think that mentality still sticks with a lot of Black people today, where, that I know the institutions that people have come out of has also played a factor in terms of why these people can't think in terms of entrepreneurship, certain environments, or just thinking further, just beyond them being under a contract or working under somebody. Or
Absolutely.
They can't envision themselves having something of their own or building something because you need to envision it first for it to be a reality.
Well, I think people are proud to work for other companies.
And that too.
There's
a level of prestige.
There's a level of prestige.
These,
It's almost like winning a Grammy. Like you don't need to win a Grammy to validate that you're a good artist.
Yes.
But these artists will swear and die by it. Like they will be upset if they don't get it because they feel like it's a recognition amongst their peers, right? So I think that's the same thing when it comes to any branding.
But LeVar Ball really showed the blueprint for a lot of guys. But a lot of guys still never jumped on the bandwagon, I guess because he didn't really see the level of success. That Black people would like to see. Because I think what it comes down to for a lot of people is you need to see the success for you to want to pursue that avenue. You know what I mean? So there has to be a beacon of light and hope, right? There has to be the guy that's the truth. He made it happen. So like Michael Jordan.
There were people before, but like for Black brands, like there was a FUBU once upon a time.
FUBU, yeah.
But that was like the 80s. And then obviously you had guys like LL Cool J bumping this up. This is old school talk, by the way. If you guys are born anywhere past what?
No, look it up. You can look up FUBU. Just
look up FUBU. Look up LL Cool J. How they kind of did the marketing situation with that, because that went hand in hand.
Yes.
So sometimes you need the help. Like so, if
cosign.
Yeah, like a cosign. Like say for a Black brand, if they reach out to say like a Black athletic brand. They reach out to an athlete, you still have to have the athlete that's willing to participate.
Exactly,
and join those things. Because, okay, maybe the athlete's not going to create their own brand. Let's not make an athlete an entrepreneur all of a sudden.
Well, they don't need to. They have the money, the capability,
so,
delegation of what they want done and whatnot. They could do that.
Exactly. So they can help support businesses. And not off the strength that they're Black. But let's just be real, guys. You're telling me, out of all these brands, only brands that are non-Black have good ideas, have good concepts,
and see,
we gotta look at it for real.
But that's the one that really irks me is because it's painting a narrative,
of course,
to the general public,
of course,
that we are incapable of creating our own brand. We are incapable of creating our own athleisure wear. We're incapable of creating our own luxury brand.
Yes,
because when you look around and you don't see any Black people in the room, you don't see any Black people that are owners or on the board of
big players,
big players in these games. What do you think? Like, what do you think that sets to all the young entrepreneurs? It's like, oh, I could never reach those status because we're not there. It's like, or at best, what I can do is I'll have to go to a gatekeeper and say, could you can use can I be at your service?
Yes,
can I be at your service because I have the skills, I have the skill sets to create something, but the only thing is I don't have an outlet. So we got guys, unfortunately, selling their talent short and going into these big corporations, and then they gobble up your talent, and now they put it out to the world as if it was theirs, right? Mm-hmm. And then once again, another Black entrepreneur, another Black potential owner now has faded in the background while a big company just absorbs their talent.
Exactly. And I don't even think it has to do with success or failure when it comes to this, because let's face the facts. Like, not every business can be successful.
Yes.
That's just what it is, right? And chances are most businesses are going to fail than be successful. That's not the problem I have, especially with the Black community. It's not the fact that failure is going to be on the horizon potentially. My thing is that even in failure, there still could be great success. And what I mean by that is that you putting yourself out there, having the mentality to start something, having the ideas, willing to push the needle, those type of things end up motivating the next generation, motivating the next guy that wants to do something, because they're like, you know what, this guy did this, but he did it wrong. He's supposed to have did it this way. If I was him, I would have did this. So someone is learning off of the mistakes that their forefathers made, right? Or people before them made. That's how life works, right? So you have to have guys failing for other guys to succeed. That's just how it works. So I'm not even saying that the marketing or anything has to be successful. It just has to be done. The brand has to be created. It needs to be done. An athlete needs to start it. Doesn't matter if it's successful, like the Big Baller brand and LeVar Ball. That idea still sits with me, that he wanted to create his own brand. That idea still sits with me compared to any other person that just signed the deal. I still think of LeVar Ball and I go like, damn, what if that made it big? Like, that would have been huge, like in terms of the optics. That's what I'm trying to say. If that went somewhere, Big Baller brand, and a family company, Black-owned business, it manages to really hit its potential,
I think it could have went somewhere. I think
it's not over for that. His
and
sons don't promote the brand
they
as much as he wants them to, which is not up to them to promote the brand because they have their own lucrative deals with other companies, right? But it's interesting how that, like I said, sometimes one person can motivate the rest. It just depends on the
100%.
mentality. You're looking for the mentality. You're not looking for the success.
Yes.
First, you need the mentality. Then we're moving in the right direction. You gotta walk. You gotta crawl before you can walk, right?
I think the biggest issue with the Black community and a lot of people, especially a lot of athletes, is they have, I'm not going to say all of them are coming out of poverty, but there's going to be a level of guys that come into these different leagues in sports and they're coming out of poverty. So they're trying to get the quick cash, you know what I mean? They're thinking short term rather than long term. So if they get a good contract, they're thinking to sign it as quick as possible because they don't know if they're gonna get a contract as big as that again.
Of course, once in a lifetime
Once
money,
in a
once in a lifetime
so
opportunities.
So these are quick fix to a bigger problem.
Of course.
Right? So they're thinking of being rich rather than being wealthy.
But I said that individualism comes with capitalism.
Yes,
Because if
it
they're going to
does.
give you a check individually, why would you, I get that all to myself?
So there has to be a level of mentality switch for people to get to the next level and think long-term growth, think wealth, think about next generation, the next 2 generations. And this is why other backgrounds and ethnicities have gotten their second, third generational wealth because they weren't thinking only in terms of themselves. They were thinking in terms of the grand scheme of things. How do I set up my offsprings? How do I set up
Exactly, but I think it comes down to fear, right? Fear that I won't get a chance like this again.
Yes.
I won't be able to deal with my bills. Again, people are thinking about the immediate future. They're not thinking later on. Later on, I'll think later on. That's how people usually tend to go about life, right? People aren't thinking in 10 years, where am I going to be? They're thinking about tomorrow, where am I going to be? Where am I going to be in the next week or next month? Can I pay my bills? So as long as you pay your bills and things are flowing, you're not really thinking too far. So that's why if someone gives you a check, hands you a check, like, for example, let's just face the facts. Most people, even if they call themselves entrepreneurs, and we see this in the podcast lane as well, if a sponsor rolls in and wants to tell you to put a sponsor in your video and promote something, what are you going to do in those scenarios?
Well, what kind of sponsor? Are we talking
Sponsor
about?
something that like is
But
in
like, is a
relation,
sponsor
like,
that's beneficial to the
well, just
actual
monetary gain, like nothing
monetary
have to do
gain?
with your content. Because people have podcasts and they, for example, shout out gambling websites, for example, but they don't talk about gambling themselves, but it ties into maybe some of the content that they discuss.
So, are you asking me, am I gonna allow that to be on the platform?
For example, would you allow that? Like, say, for example, it doesn't align with what you got going on. Would you allow something like that for the monetary purpose of it, to grow the podcast or benefit you financially?
That's a good question. I would say it's not so easy to answer it immediately.
Yeah, of course.
Because it's one of those things where you would have to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to weigh the pros and cons. So I would say that I don't really have an answer for how to actually react, because at the same time, you have to evaluate people that do have sponsorship and stuff of that sort. You got to ask yourself, are they coming from a state of poverty, or are they coming from a state of sustainability? Do they? So if they already have like a 9 to 5, right?
Exactly.
And they're already funding their business, do they necessarily need that sponsorship? I don't think so. They could wait around, because what the sponsorship is telling me is that I got something that's working, and as fast as that opportunity came around, something else could come around.
But you can see it.
But you don't need to sell yourself short.
But you can see how the mentality would change with somebody that was, say, less fortunate
Yes.
in life.
No,
Like,
for
you see
sure.
what I'm saying? Like,
For sure.
Of course, if you're in a decent situation, you always have a better option. But
For
like you
sure.
said, of the poverty thing, right? It just depends on what mentality you're coming from. I'm not saying all black people are in impoverished situations. There's some that are that aren't. But what I've realized is you really still don't skip some of the phases that we all go through, right? And that's usually identity crisis, in my opinion, because I think when, like, we were talking about stereotypes and stuff like that and being black, it doesn't matter if you're a rich black guy or a poor black guy, you're still black. Like, you see what I'm saying? So, like, ultimately, the mentality could be the same. You could be rich and still have the same mentality as someone in the hood.
Yes.
Just because of your skin color, right?
Yes.
Just because of the stereotypes they put you in. You guys can both literally think the same way in terms of how you see yourself,
Yes.
right? Even though someone gets more money, it doesn't mean you necessarily have more confidence or anything more than someone that doesn't have money. So, like I said, when it comes to when it comes to branding, though, when it comes to the black culture, black community, biggest thing is a mentality shift. We have to get to the point where we start believing in our own selves, putting ourselves out there, and seeing what happens, seeing if people are going to support it. But again, people have to support it. And we had the same conversation with Dr. Umar Johnson. You need to have things in place for black people to support.
That is
You
so
need
true.
to have things from black people for black people to support. You need to have both things working at the same time. People have to create stuff, then people have to support stuff.
But at the same time, people that do have those, they get to that point where it seems as though they've done really well for themselves. They're an entrepreneur. They go to the highest point, but now, you know, they come out, and it shows that they show to the general public, I'm for my black community. You know what I mean?
Of course.
I'm doing everything for my black community. I want to help young entrepreneurs. I want to help young athletes. I want to help young actors. They're trying to build like a whole ecosystem,
Of course.
with that situation. But then you come to find out they also want to do other extracurricular activities at the same time.
What do you mean?
Where they want to exploit certain individuals for their own gain. So it could be exploit them financially.
That happens absolutely in our community as well.
It could be exploiting them sexually, you know.
Well, you can never get rid of corruption. Like, corruption's gonna be in any group. There's gonna be like people that are doing things that are incorrect.
You are right. Because
Or
that's
things
not. That's
that
not.
are
I'm not
against-
saying that that's specifically for the black community.
Yeah. You're just saying.
I'm just saying in general that where, you know, sometimes you're put in a position where even a kid that is impoverished.
Oh,
you
I know
know,
what you're saying. I know what you're
you know,
saying.
back could be against the wall, and
Of
he's like, well,
course.
I'll take this situation
Exactly.
if that's gonna
If
take me
that's
to
gonna
the
take
next
me
level.
to the next level. Speaking on that,
Speaking on that, I wanted to talk about
Terrence Howard.
Terrence Howard.
Yeah,
when-
Terrence Howard had an interview with Pat Bet David.
Yeah.
And basically it's self-explanatory, the content. So we'll get into the video of Pat Bet David, and yeah, let's see what Terrence Howard has to say on manhood and kind of Hollywood. You'll see, it's a very interesting interview, honestly.
Well, it really comes back down to individuals in power,
and what
what
you're willing to do to get to where you need to get.
And some people do falter,
Yeah.
unfortunately, because they want something so bad that they're willing to give certain things to get it. But at the same time, when they give it, you find out that it wasn't worth the squeeze.
Well, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze.
Yeah, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze, and also they never truly recover from situations that they were in.
Absolutely. So yeah, we'll get the video started.
Did you ever have the opportunity where you got invited and you said no to it?
Hell yeah. Puffy invited me for weeks, asking me to come and teach him how to, wanted me to be his acting coach for a while. Go there and he's sitting around just looking. I'm like, okay, what's the material you want to work on? He's just looking at me. Then next thing you know, okay, hey, will you help me? I want to hear your music. So I come over there and I play the music. And he's sitting there just looking at me, like waiting. Okay. So then my assistant was like, he wants to hang out with you next week. And I was like, for what? He's like, I think he's trying to fuck you. That's what my assistant said. And I was like, oh, now I get it. So now no more communication. Now you know to be hands off with somebody. A number of producers come in and make the approach, and you threaten to punch them in the mouth, or threaten to knock their head off for talking to you like, or looking at you like you're a woman. When you approach a real man about his masculinity, you're gonna get a real reaction back. It's a difference when a guy walks in a room and when a man walks into a room.
Did you ever have the opportunity where you got invited and you said no?
Quite crazy.
Yeah, I'll give the background a little bit on this interview.
Yes.
We got a clip, but there's a lot more to this clip. Terrence Howard went on Pat Bet David's podcast to talk about basically like Hollywood and a bunch of stuff. And mind you, they paint Terrence Howard in as like a crazy
person. But I noticed that they start to do that when you're not following the script.
Yes, when you start saying stuff that is not scripted and it's, kind of unhinged.
And also that's against the industry.
Yes, usually if it's against the industry. And usually when I notice this happens, especially when someone's career is falling off.
Yes.
Especially. It's never somebody at the peak of their career trying to really do all that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's usually when they're on the downside of their career. So
and this is why a lot of people tend to ignore those people too, because it's like you didn't
say when you're popping.
Exactly. You weren't a whistleblower when it counted. Now that things aren't working in your favor, it's like, well, I got nothing else to lose. I might as well be a whistleblower and let people know what's going on. It's like, it's a little too late for that. So you question
some of their integrity because it's like, it took so long for you to come out. It took it getting exposed for you to say anything anyways, right? Mm-hmm. But anyways, so Terrence Howard was just talking about like Hollywood, and the big thing he was talking about was keeping your man card. Yes. So that was important when he was basically talking about like guys going into like situations, especially Hollywood. Obviously, he is talking about P. Diddy in this situation. Obviously, if you guys heard what he was already saying about P. Diddy and the allegations he said, but what Terrence was basically saying in that interview, if you have a chance to watch more clips or watch the full interview, he was basically saying that, a lot of men sometimes have to give up what they don't necessarily want to give up, but for the opportunity, because of the circumstance they're in, because of the fact that they want to make it big and change whatever life they have, flip it around, right?
Not for themselves only, even for their family.
Yeah, for their family. They want to turn a new leaf, see big achievements. But at the end of the day, as he said, some people in Hollywood, they're going to try you. They're going to, press you, get you to do things you don't want to do. So how far are you willing to go? How strong is your integrity when it comes to this shit? Because it comes the same thing about branding. Obviously, when it comes to Hollywood, that's a crazy extreme where you got predators and all type of people. But point of what I'm saying is like, what extreme, like some people are, what I'd say in this situation, I'm losing my thought in terms of what I'm trying to say, but it's the fact that a lot of people are doing stuff just to benefit themselves, even if it comes at the detriment of their own character.
Yes.
So it's definitely hard to believe in some cases that people would care about a community when people don't even care about their own personal integrity, sometimes just to get a check or to get a dollar, right? And yeah, that was a good interview just because he was exposing a lot of things that happen behind the scenes where people are so desperate to get opportunities instead of create their own. But again, they did paint him as crazy for even coming out and saying these things. So what was your thought about what he has to say in terms of, doing stuff to get to the next level, like being in bed with a company or a business owner, figuratively and literally? Like, what's your thoughts on those type of things?
I would say that Terrence Howard has touched on the point that many other people in the past have also touched on.
Cat Williams hit
came
on the head, and his shit went
blew
crazy
right
on
up,
YouTube.
right? Yeah, exactly.
Called him crazy too.
That's what I'm saying. They calling everybody
crazy.
that's going against the grain, that's saying stuff that's opposing the industry, and they gotta definitely find ways to discredit these individuals, because if word goes out that this is actually going on, then that shuts down the whole system,
Program
right?
is
The whole
over.
program that's going on. A lot of people are catching cases.
Absolutely.
It's going to be big lawsuits here, left, right, and center. Money's being lost. So they have to discredit a lot of these individuals that do come out and say these things. But at the same time, when I look at individuals that were in Hollywood and especially kid stars, those are the, unfortunately, they're the easiest targets for predators.
Of course.
Right? These parents, they want their kids to make it to stardom, and they'll do whatever it takes for them to get there, but then they don't know the ins and outs of the industry. You start pawning your kid off to one of these executives, and they're sickles, and they're doing all these twisted things in the industry. And then the kid, they don't really know what's going on. They're like, well, what else am I going to do? They're scared. They don't want to fail their parents, and they also don't want to feel what they got going on.
But I want to talk towards this, like, how do we fix that mentality, like the character flaw that you have of that desperation? And because this is what we're talking about.
Yes.
Being in desperate situations where you have nothing to bring to the table. And that's what happens when you sign a deal where you're getting screwed in the back.
Yes.
And that's the same thing when you're in the executive office and you're getting screwed in the back. The same way. It's the same. You're getting fucked on two sides. What I'm trying to say is, so how do we get past that mentality of that desperate, I need the deal, I need to sign with them, I need to, collaborate with these people, I need to give them my rights, I need to give up this to get that? Like, at what point do we say to ourselves, we got to stop needing these people and start creating what we need to do and just live with the results? Because we want to all make it big. We don't want to make it locally. We want to make it big, bro, globally. We want to hit the pinnacle, hit the top of the mountain. We're not, even when someone creates a business, they're not trying to just be a average business. They want to be above average business, making good money, have good clientele and all that type of stuff. So how do you get past your shortcomings, especially when you just start something or you never really got your feet wet, an opportunity comes knocking at your door, but you're going to have to give up something, and that something might not be something that sits with you well, like it could be intellectual property, it could be whatever it is. I'm not going to go to the extreme as Terrence Howard, but even that's a possibility for some people, right? Women, I know, can give up sex for opportunity.
Yes.
You get what I mean? Men are doing the same.
Yeah.
So my whole thing is, how do you get past that point of the mentality? Because I feel like that's the one that plagues most people. It's the mentality that, you know what, nothing else. I mean, I can't say no to a good deal. Like, it's going to make my life better. Why would I say no? Because like I said, a woman's going to say the same thing to herself a lot of times, but it's only her integrity that's going to protect her.
So speaking on that, the integrity part, I think the only thing a person can really do to prepare for something of that sort is the culture in which you come into. If honor is a big thing, saving face is a big thing in your culture, integrity is a big thing in your culture, then you won't sell yourself short to partake in those things.
That's
but
the
if
truth.
there's no strong culture behind you, and everything is just to the wayside and anything goes and you're going to do whatever it takes. And people always say, like, you need to sacrifice to get to where you need to be. Sacrifice can mean anything. That's very vague. You know what I mean?
Vague. What does that mean?
What does that
off your
mean?
finger, like,
exactly.
To get here?
What does that mean? So when push
start
comes to
doing
shove,
some demon stuff.
that's
like,
what I'm saying.
What are we
right?
talking about?
It's like when push comes to shove, that thought process of, well, you got to sacrifice something in order to get something.
Poke my eye out, like.
So it's like, well, I guess this is what they're talking about. They're just gonna interpret it
whichever way.
So,
right? Oh, does it mean I have to do this?
Exactly.
Okay,
so
well,
they must have been talking about this. So I guess this is what I have to do, right? To get to the next level. Maybe I'm not the only one that's doing this. Maybe this is a continuous thing.
Well, that's what happens,
It's
right?
like a continuous ritual, right?
If I say no, then
The
he
next
said
person,
because I
yes.
see the next guy that got the opportunity.
And is where they are, like they've gotten so far in the industry.
And even
so
the
on and so
mentality
forth.
that if I don't do this, he's going to do it. The next
That
guy
too.
behind me. So also thinking of the competitive nature of like, well, if I don't do it, if I have such a big issue with it, buddy behind me is not going to have such a big issue with that.
Exactly.
And his career takes off.
And a lot of the time with people in the industry, what tends to happen is you don't see the cracks in the earlier stages.
Never.
It's always as time goes on, you know, you're going to see the chinks in the armor. It's going to start cracking.
Absolutely.
And then they start to change. We've seen this multiple times where multiple celebrities, they tend to turn either into drug users, junkies,
all type of
you
stuff.
know, they're in what's it called? They're in rehab for all types of
you don't realize, like we're
yeah.
thinking it's like the music pressure.
Yeah,
the
no, this
fame.
is a real thing.
Sometimes it's like things they've done that, you know, they never recovered.
They never recovered
just to get the opportunity.
And that's the thing, right? We don't know why they're in rehab. We don't understand why they're a junkie. Why are the heavily alcoholics or drug users
or medicated
or medicated all the time? Maybe it's because they're going through something mentally from what they've done.
And what they've done.
And they don't want to
Decisions they've
remember
made,
it. And it's like when they're not using drugs, when they're not drinking alcohol, it comes pouring in. When you're when you're about to go to sleep, it could be a reminder, you know. Waking up in the middle of the night screaming or yelling, you know what I mean? We don't know what's behind the scene, but then media wants to paint it off as, this person's crazy. They need rehab. They need help.
Yeah.
You got Britney Spears shaving her head off, and like she's just crazy. But how did she get crazy? Because last time I checked, when she came in the industry, she looked completely normal.
So now she
everyone
crazy,
loved her. Everyone adored her. All of a sudden, she just shaving her
money
head.
and fame did
Yeah,
that?
but
Nah, I'm pretty sure she had to deal with a lot of
She had
traumas.
to deal with like a lot of
things she didn't
executives
want to
and
go
stuff
do.
of that
Exactly.
sort, right?
Stuff she didn't want to go do.
The person that played That's So Raven.
Yeah, some of the actress.
Again, the actress shaving her head off, becoming whatever she became. I don't even know.
All these.
There's a
these
lot of
people that end up in these
Justin
situations.
Bieber, another guy that was childhood sweetheart to many. What is he now? He looks like a hobo every time he walks outside.
You never even know what he's going through.
Yeah, I don't know what he's going through mentally, but I think some people are stronger mentally and they're able to overcome those situations. They look at it as like, I did what I had to do, but like I'm not gonna let that kind of determine the rest of my life. So they move forward. But I think the main thing that we were trying to get to for that specific, with that specific clip, is that a lot of people don't understand why people are doing what they do. And when you're put into a corner and you're coming from poverty,
I don't even say poverty though. Like I don't even put it on poverty.
But some people are middle class.
Yeah, some people are doing good and still
doing well.
That.
Yeah, and they
I don't
actually
even put it on. That's a mentality.
Yeah,
thing.
it's a mentality thing. So when you're in those situations,
the point of why I'm saying not poverty, because some people are already successful, but they want to get to the next level of success.
Yes.
So you can't say
right.
they have a poverty
You're
mentality.
Right. Yeah, it's not,
and then someone tells them to go do something. They're already successful. You don't need to do that. But they want to because they want the extras it comes with. And sometimes that's what I mean. So even greed can be a huge factor of that. Greed guides you to bad decisions, right? Because if you're greedy as well or self-centered, then every decision you make is about yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't think outside of yourself. You just think, is this going to benefit me? Is it going to get me to the next level?
That's interesting.
And then I think people get caught up in that whole situation. But to get on to just spin off of that situation, I want to talk about the whole Anthony Edward. Or do we have not time for that?
Yeah, we're running out of time, so
Okay.
we're just gonna kind of wrap it up in terms of. I was just gonna say that
We
people
get into that. The Anthony Edwards was a wild scenario.
Yeah, that was a wild scenario. We're gonna have to talk
situation,
about
but
that
we'll talk
another
about that different time.
Yeah, but I think the final thing I want to say is people can be not only starving physically, they can be starving mentally, where they just don't have the wherewithal of the understanding of what it really takes to get to the next level. So they'll do whatever it takes to get to the next level because of just the hunger factor mentally, to get them to that different level, they got to do stuff and sacrifice themselves, even at their own sanity, their own faculties, right? Because you can sacrifice your body and not really think too much about it. But when you sacrifice your mind, that is sometimes a thing you can never get back.
Yes, exactly. But to like kind of wrap up the whole conversation of what we were talking about today, what advice would you give? First of all, I want to talk about just a quick athletic side of things and us having so much athletes and brand representation, but we don't own any of these brands. I want you to just give your thoughts on that, if there's any solutions or things that you would think of just to speak on quickly. And also when it comes to Terrence Howard and just talking about, people being desperate and taking opportunities because they're desperate or because they're greedy or because whatever was promised to them. What's your thoughts on those?
I would just say, quick sum up for that. I would just say, in terms of athleisure wear and doing your own thing and trying to promote your own brand as a Black entrepreneur in the Black community, is you do have a vast amount of people that will buy your product if you can stick long enough in your niche. So if you want to sell something and athleisure wear for that specifically, you got to stay with it. You got to stay with it, even if it looks hard. All it comes down to is you getting a cosign. If they see you keep putting out the effort, you keep putting out like marketing, and you keep learning about your craft.
Yeah, like I'll say a quick strategy for something like this. Like if we're gonna start a Black brand, in my opinion, quick thing you can do. You're gonna start a Black brand. Obviously, you're never gonna get the big hitters, the LeBron James, all these type of big ballers, right? But hear me out. You follow the smaller players, younger players, people coming up, right? Try and give them some stuff. Try and give them some incentive. Try and latch on to the players that aren't known. Because I think if you build a stable, then you can eventually have some leverage. I think that's how it works. You're going to have to start at the bottom and rise to the top. I don't think you go for the big, because even though we're asking the question of why don't these big athletes support Black brands? Honestly, let's just face the facts. It's not going to happen. The money's too much on the table for them to go support a local brand, right? Yeah. So you have to start with the younger cats, guys coming out of the league, even from high school. Visibility. Yeah, but even from high school, get them before they're professional.
Support.
You need to support them when they're younger, support communities when they're younger. Then when they get older, there's at least that.
There's actually blueprints to that. There's blueprints.
That's what I'm saying.
Follow the blueprints that's already out there. Read a book called Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. He talks about how he started Nike. Take those specific points, implement it into your own business. 100%. There's a bunch of brands that have already started it. They've laid the foundation for what it means to gain success. Do that. Take their information, read their books, get the points, add that same points, recreate it in your own fashion for the Black community, and guarantee if you stay with it long enough, people start buying into your brand.
Yes, and then for the final thing of Terrence Howard, I think the biggest thing is confidence. We have to instill in our people when we're young, older, doesn't matter if you're impoverished. I think you have to instill confidence, self-respect in people. When you have that, then integrity will always be something that they lean on when they're in those tough situations to make a decision. Because don't kid yourself. Some of these decisions are tough to make, even if you have to sacrifice something. and you don't want to give it up, it can be a great sacrifice, but also the reward is such a high reward that people do contemplate these things. Like I said, man, woman, doesn't matter. People can be proposition. Everyone has a price. It's called temptation, right? It's called, that's what it is, right? It's like a temptation. I'll give you this if you give me that. Yeah. Give me your right arm and I'll give you the best life ever. But we have to have that in our head that nothing in life is given easily. And if it's given easily, it's usually not worth it. Yes. So understand that and you'll be good.
Stay patient, stay focused, and keep striving for greatness.
That's it. That's what it is. Far From Normal podcast.
And we are L. Deuces.
Peace.